WDNA 88.9 FM, and this is a Frost Jazz Hour that comes to you every Thursday at 11. Thank you so much to those folks who are joining us live today in the Jazz Gallery. As always, our shows are hosted live, so you are more than welcome to visit us in the Jazz Gallery if you'd like to participate in the audience. Today we have John Hart, one of the most sought-after and prolific guitarists. He's also a teaching artist, head of the Frost Jazz Guitar Department. And I'd actually like to start off the show by sharing a quote by John Hart himself. He says, "Every musician is a unique individual. I try to find that which is inside of each student, the special qualities that make them who they are, and nurture those strengths by providing all the information necessary to develop the skill sets that are demanded of a professional musician, but also paying close attention to the varying needs of the individual player. I hope to direct each student on a path to not only a long career in music, but also an artistically fulfilling one." And with that said, the first tune he will be playing is Days of Wine and Roses. Good morning, WDNA folks. This is 88.9 FM, the UM Frost Jazz Hour. I'm Nicole Garcia, your host, and I'm sitting here with my professor at one point, John Hart. He is the head of the Frost Jazz Guitar Department. And earlier on the set, I shared one of the quotes of his for his teaching methods and his teaching style. You played at the top, was it Days of Wine and Roses? And then the tune that you played just now?
Chelsea Bridge by Bill
Chelsea
Strayhorn.
Bridge. So looking back at your discography, what are some of the ways that your artistic style has developed, maybe from your first solo John Hart quartet trio to what you're about to release in November?
I've recently listened to the first record I did. I was on Blue Note Records. I did two records for Blue Note. My very first record, on the urging of my youngest son, I listened to it, some of it, after having not listened to it for maybe 25 years. And it sounded good. It was okay. It sounded like, okay, all the things I learned in school, I'm like putting it, and to writing, the songwriting and stuff, Some of the compositions I listen, it's like, oh, if somebody brought that into me now, I'd say, okay, wait a minute, you got to change this a little bit and do this, And then I listened to some records I did later on Concord Records. It's like, now I sound much more kind of closer to what I do now, So that evolution happens quickly. I've been recording for Steeplechase, the great independent European label, and I think I've done five. I think this is my sixth record that's coming out. So each one of them I've used different ensembles and different guest artists. I've had some great Dick Oates, Gary Simoleon, Rich Perry, Gary Versailles, some musicians that I've known for years, and changing the instrumentation a little bit. And on the urging of the record producer, Nils Winter, he asked me to do a trio with no drums, which I've never done, with a great cornetist named Kirk Knufke, who I'd never played with either, and stuff. And then I had a good friend and colleague of mine, Carl DeRosa. I got him to come from Michigan, and we all
great.
three.
That's awesome.
We all three gathered in New York and did that record, which is called Love Is, and it's coming out in November, I think. So really, it ended up. I wrote music and arranged music specifically for those two other musicians, and I think and as I said, I hadn't played with Kirk, but he's very open and musician. It was just felt like we'd been playing together for years, so it's very easy. So.
And when you started those first few records, some of the feedback that I hear from musicians about record labels is that sometimes, they can be overbearing or maybe want to direct you in a certain way. Did you have any sort of guidance at the time with an artistic direction, or was it pretty open?
I guess when I think back, I'm pretty fortunate that I kind of did what I wanted. And they let me do it. It was very different then. I think my first recording was 1988. You went in the recording studio, and it cost a lot of money. We didn't have the digital recording. And I wasn't. I'd been in New York and playing for some years. I'd been out of college. I think it was, say, 1980. I would have been 27 years old.
Wow, okay.
So I had a little bit of experience, but you kind of had to be ready to get in there and do it. But I haven't even, that's an interesting question, but I haven't thought about it. But I've been fortunate. I've kind of done whatever I've wanted,
Yeah.
Even recording with the bigger labels.
And with your bandmates, I know Chris Potter, a young Chris Potter, was on that record as well. As a band's leader, how much space do you leave for your fellow musicians to kind of contribute arrangement-wise with something that's, jazz?
Maybe not arrangement-wise, but playing-wise, I give them all the space they want.
Okay.
Because that's why I hired them,
Yeah.
These great players. But if somebody if we're rehearsing and somebody says, why don't we do this here? And okay, actually, that's cool, That's cool. That happens. That happened on a couple of incidences on the most recent record I did.
Oh, really?
And then I do that on other people's records, and hopefully they'll call me back. But I'm not shy to put in my 2 cents. If I think something might help help an arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And especially for younger musicians, kind of knowing your place or how much feedback to give, how much feedback not to give. But I guess it all kind of depends on your level of closeness with that musician, perhaps?
When I first started my career and getting some more high-profile gigs and touring and stuff, I was the youngest person in the group, which everybody will say that. They say, I used to be the youngest person, and then suddenly I was the oldest person. So I was the youngest person. I kept my mouth shut and just listened, and didn't, I mean, it was a little bit different times then, but I wasn't ready to, working with these great musicians that I'd been listening to on records, and suddenly I'm on stage with them. It's like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and kind of keep my mouth shut and listen to what they have to say, and if anybody wants me to do something different, I'll do it. But it's a good, I think it's a balance. I think it's a balance. Sometimes I'll suggest something and everybody's like, no. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever.
One of my favorite things to do is listen to an artist's discography start to finish. And sometimes you'll hear feedback from others, and I think more so in pop or mainstream music, it doesn't quite happen in jazz as much, where you'll hear something along the lines of, oh, I hate so-and-so's newer stuff. People say, I hate their newer stuff.
Right.
But I find that in these more niche genres like jazz, I tend to actually appreciate the newer stuff more because, like we were talking about earlier, these are the kinds of artists who have always kind of had their own artistic freedom. And so when you listen to their first records, you hear like a younger version of them. You don't hear somebody else. You hear a younger version of them. And you hear how that evolves and how... and you hear how the changes that they make in the music have made them turn into who they are today.
Yeah, the artistic development. If you look through the history of jazz, Miles Davis just kind of changed jazz. And John Coltrane, within 10 years, went from playing like Charlie Parker, a tenor, to being John Coltrane, like completely. The transformation that happened. Those are two kind of more extreme examples of the greatest artists that we have, and how they develop and how they just follow their path. They don't keep coming. And pop music could be the artist's vision more. It could be more the vision of the people that they have producing them and the direction they want to go. It's sometimes that's a combination of that. I think the jazz artists are less influenced by what a producer. We may have producers in the studio, but a lot of times that's just to kind of keep things, have another set of ears.
Right.
Pop music, the producer's like, let's, almost like the orchestrator and the arranger.
Absolutely.
And stuff.
Yeah.
It's very similar. I think about it, what I do when I'm teaching, and my students will bring in original compositions, and I'll say, you need to play this, repeat this section. You need to play this again. And it's similar to what happens, in pop music with a
absolutely.
producer. You're hiding the hook, or the chorus is not strong enough here. You got to do this and so, and that's
Yeah, and I am actually recording my first record, and I think back to my time at Frost, and I think back to the feedback that my professors would give me, and I think that maybe the scariest part of being an artist is the fact that, okay, once I release this, I can't really take it back. Once you make your decisions for your arrangement, once you make your decisions for the mixing and the mastering, and you put it out there, well, it's out there. And how you were saying, when you look back, you say, oh, maybe I could have put this note here, or maybe I could have done the arrangement a little differently.
Yeah.
But what are some ways or maybe advice you would give to your younger students when they're first creating that first record? And
I've second guessed things on every recording I've done.
Really?
Everyone. And then sometimes if some time passes and I'll go back to listen to something, it's like sounds totally different. It's like I don't really know what I was thinking about, but I'll get obsessed with the details. Joni Mitchell had a very interesting quote I read some time ago. She said, when you put out a record, I guess even earlier in her career, and then the critics write about it maybe in a not, in a more critical manner, and she says the things they criticize have nothing to do with what I'm trying to do. The things that I think I didn't do successfully, they never talk about that stuff.
Really?
They never talk about that stuff. So we get, it's the whole, the cliche of not being able to see the forest for the trees, that thing. You just try. At some point, you make the decision, and it's done. Mm-hmm. If you think of it as just a step along your journey as an artist, you're developing. Mm-hmm. Another thing about recording, one of the things I love about recording, and especially when I was younger, you always learn a lot when you record.
Oh, absolutely.
When you record, when you go in the studio, and especially trying to work on your stuff, you always learn. So what you didn't do the first time, you've learned some things, and the next time you try to do that. So I think you just gotta kind of say, okay, this is, it's very easy also in the digital age now with all the being able to manipulate technology too, is to just not be able to make that decision. Let me fix this, let me do this again, and the next thing you know, the music is just has no life to it.
Totally.
You have to, there's a thing about trying to create that spontaneous moment, whether there's mistakes or not. In jazz, it's like I'd rather have the mistakes and have something that's really got an amazing feel, and that, we leave the mistakes. And you hear mistakes. It's funny, the older I get, I go back to listen to all my favorite records. It's like, oh boy, somebody just fracked a note there. They just kind of made it, and it doesn't matter. It's still like a Mount Everest level recording, with those fracked notes and stuff have zero bearing on how great a record is and stuff. So.
I mean, sometimes those are the things that give it that extra level of intimacy, right? That cracked notes.
Well, people like to know that they're listening to human beings.
Absolutely.
Play or sing or whatever.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to your newest record.
Yeah, thank you.
What can we expect from that?
Man, I have to just listen. Hopefully everybody likes it.
The newest John Hart, releasing in, you said November?
November. Love Is.
Love Is. Well, thank you so much, John. We really appreciate you being here today. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more music shortly. Live on the air with John Hart on the Frost Jazz Hour. We just went over some of the topics about recording and the evolution of an artist, and we'll continue the show with Giant Steps. Playing Giant Steps, sitting live in the studio with John Hart on the UN Frost Jazz Hour. John's, basically creating these solo guitar arrangements on the spot.
Don't try it at home.
What are some, I know you were talking about, you wanted to talk about the evolution of the art of solo guitar.
When I started, my teacher at U of M, who I replaced, Randall Dollahan, was kind of a master of solo and chord melodies and stuff. So I started kind of with him and got the idea in my head about doing that. Everybody plays some solo guitar. We have to play gigs sometime, and some people really gravitate towards it. Joe Pass played with groups. He played with trios. He recorded with and at one point in his career, he just started playing solo and became really known for that. Joe Pass played solo guitar on stage at Carnegie Hall, solo jazz guitar. People kind of forget about him. He was like kind of one of the real trailblazers of that. So when I started learning tunes and harmonizing tunes, I just had to make an arrangement, and I just did it. And I played it pretty much the same, and I do that, and then I learned another one, and I kind of learned some new techniques and stuff, and so on and so on. And it took years and years to start being very kind of to be able to develop the vocabulary and to be able to make the arrangements spontaneously, which I kind of do right now. Some of the things I'm playing today, I kind of Chelsea Bridge. There were some certain things that I've kind of played. There was improvisation. There were certain things that I did. Some of the Days of Wine and Roses, nothing, no preparation at all, just straight through. So, and then at the more I think advanced point, I'm trying to think. Okay, let me take this, and I got to create a whole thing, create a whole composition with it, with all the shape, the ups and downs, the beginning, the middle, the end, all that, try to make that happen. Decide, is it going to be out of time? Is it going to be in time? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be slow? Is it going to be a combination of all those things? And if you're putting together a concert, then it's going to be what's going to happen on this tune, then what's going to be different that happens in this one, and so on. So it's fun. I really love doing it. I haven't recorded a solo record. And I'm thinking, it's probably about
2025.
I don't know why, because I've been playing solo guitar. I really like to do it. I'm pretty comfortable doing it for many years. So sometime soon.
Yeah, as one of your, I know I didn't study guitar with you, but as one of your students from the duo class, when the instrumentalists had to take their solo, it's just them.
Yeah.
Out in the open.
Right.
And I also really appreciate what you said about putting a concert together and how you're making these decisions about the arrangements based on the concert. So for something like today, how much of it do you leave open to, I know there's not many of us in the audience, but how much of it do you leave open to the energy that you're maybe feeling in the audience and the decisions you make based on how much of this is going to be rubato, how much of this is really going to be moving and having that energy going forward?
From the audience, I'm not sure. I probably have an idea of whether there's an audience or not. It's probably going to follow the same kind of format, you know.
So does that affect you, do you
Partially just
think,
to
or
keep,
no?
partially just to keep me interested. Yeah, the audience. If I'm playing at home, it's don't get nervous at all, and suddenly there's an audience. They're like, okay, of course the audience does. I played a gig in Nashville with my son Jake Hart early in the summer, and I played and the club was packed, and I played with a trio that had never played. The bass player I knew well, and the drummer just met, and nobody knew what we were going to play except me, and I didn't know. We just did the whole two sets, you know. Okay, let's do this. This feels right now.
Wow.
This feels right. This feels right. This feels right. I've been doing it a long time, so
Yeah.
so I know. But it's like this, you know. It's like, okay, we just gave the audience. You know, you want to take the audience on a journey. So we just gave them this. Let's do this now and see, you know. And they seem to respond very positively to it. You know, I like that idea of that kind of spontaneity. I think even the greatest outside of jazz, I think the greatest artists in every genre, whether they're doing the same thing every night, they try to create this feeling that it's happening for the audience, that is happening now,
Right.
that is brand new, and it is because it is happening. But the artist is trying to create that. It's like we've been playing this, but we're going to try to make it new every night, you know, and bring everybody.
Yeah, the kinds of
bring
artists that
everybody along.
really just really amaze me and their skill when they do that are kind of like, you know, the crooners and
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra, where they know that the audience is going there and they expect to hear something very similar to the record. And when you listen to these live recordings, it just sounds like like you were saying, it sounds completely spontaneous in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see how much time we have left. What tune are we doing next, if you planned it or didn't plan it?
I'm going to play Stella by Starlight, I think.
All
So
right,
Stella by
let's do it.
Starlight is one of the most common tunes. You know, it's interesting for students, too, because students learn it very early, but it's a very complex tune harmonically. Written by Victor Young. Victor Young was one of the classical composers that came over from Europe to write for Hollywood and for TV and for movies mostly. He also wrote My Foolish Heart, When I Fall in Love, some of the greatest songs. And he was also had probably one of the most prominent careers in Europe of any of the composers that came over. He was a very well-known classical composer and conductor in Europe before he ever came to the States. And Stella by Starlight is one of his masterpieces, very different song from, you know, a lot of what we play in the Great American Songbook. It's almost through composed and harmonically through composed. So, Stella by Starlight.
Stella by Starlight. We're sitting here with John Hart, and we have a live audience in the Jazz Gallery today. We have time, I think, for about 2 more tunes. How are you feeling?
Sure, sure.
Good? Sounds good.
Too Late Now by Burton Lane.
is the Frost Jazz Hour. We're here with John Hart. We have time for one more and then BBC News. One more short one.
Straight Note Chaser.
That's it, folks. Thanks for coming.